reach the conclusion that the science is settled. Unfortunately, I may get a bit technical here, but bear with me. I'm hoping to see the shallowness of the scientific approach. They list what they consider the 5 possible natural causes of climate change. Refute these 5 and say that since it isn't any of these, it must be human-caused CO2. The 5 suggested causes are first, tectonic processes, the way the Earth things go. Almost nobody disagrees with that. It's not that. Variations in the Earth's orbit. There is some argument here because the Earth has a natural 11-year cycle wobble, as one gentleman said. That's a better word than I was going to use. Volcanic eruptions. There's no question that volcanic eruptions have had short-term effects on climate. And then they rule out solar variability. Here, there are major, serious arguments. Solar activity correlates well to warm periods with high solar activity when Greenland flourished, when my Viking forebears had farms and everything else in Greenland, from 1,000 to about 1,200 year period, and then it cooled and they were all gone by about 1,400. And the Little Ice Age from about 1,700 to 1850, when cooling was prevalent with little solar activity. Sunspot, the absence of sunspots, it gets cold. The presence of sunspots, it gets hot. That isn't on the list. And then their 5th reason was internal variability of the system. And there is some impact of this, El Niños, etc., which have some impact, particularly in what's called the Pacific and Atlantic oceans. And that's it. If it isn't one of these 5, it must not only be CO2, but it must be human-caused CO2, even with the emission that clouds and the role of water vapor, the largest greenhouse gas, are not well understood. And they admit that that's not well understood. Models are then produced to predict the impact of these human-generated CO2 emissions, and voila, they don't match reality, what actually happened. They don't match what really happened at all. IPCC models usually stretch back to the year 1900. No one seems to refute the observations that the Earth warmed from 1900 to 1940, when human CO2 emissions were just beginning to rise. Then, as the industrial period starts, from 1940 to the mid-1970s, CO2 emissions began to accelerate, but global temperatures cooled significantly. Remember the fears of excessive cooling in the 1970s? From the late 1970s to 1998, the data showed warming. Since 1998, the data indicate no warming and even some modest cooling. The only portion of these 4 trends that the models match accurately is the mid-70s to 1999 period. Batting 1 in 4 with our best models doesn't commend the models to me. Worse still, the first publication of the IPCC in 1990 was immediately wrong. The numbers went in the other direction. The next release in 1995 was good within large error bands for about 10 years and then went wrong. The 2004 release was good for a few years and then went wrong. The last update in 1907 was wrong from the date of its release. What a record. Any good scientist will tell you correlation does not necessarily imply causation. They're right. But in this situation, you don't really even have correlation with CO2 emissions and temperature variations. In fact, with ancient data from eons past, it appears that a rise in temperature is what gives rise to CO2, not the other way around, as claimed today. And in spite of all this, the president, during his campaign, was saying, the science is beyond dispute, and the facts are clear. I am baffled as to how anyone can take such a position. Further, as the Congress starts ahead with this mind-numbingly complex legislation, new revelations about the science are coming to light. Just last week, I don't know how many of you saw it, because you don't get a lot of this in the news, a team of scientists exploded the underpinnings of the assertion that there had been a hockey stick-like rise in the last few decades, making them the warmest in 1,000 years. This hockey stick graph, developed originally by a Dr. Michael Mann and his associates, and shown on the back of the paper he received on entering it, has been shown extensively by the believers to back their suggestions, the upper graph, of suggesting imminent danger. Now we learn that the data were cherry-picked, and that there is more accurate presentation of the last 1,000 years as represented in the second graph in your sheet. A very different picture. one is tempted to suggest that we may well be experiencing man-made global warming, M-A-N-N, after the spread of the name, while not experiencing man-made global warming to the degree suggested by the fallacious graph. In introducing their Boxer Kerry bill in the Senate, Senator Kerry announced that he, what might be called a Truth Commission website, to help the American people understand this complex subject. I have to believe we need the truth, but hope the good senator will be even-handed on his site and debunk the false notions presented by so many in the doomsday crowd. Let's go back to some first principles of things like the Clean Air Act and the role of the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. We all know that a few decades ago, we had air pollution problems. The EPA was formed. Carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, lead particles, and some other materials were a real problem. We've addressed those problems. Between 1990 and 2007, there has been a 41% drop in these true pollutants. Los Angeles, for example, has seen a further 27% drop in particle pollution in the last decade. The goal has been to clear these pollutants from the atmosphere as completely as possible, and it is working. Then we get to CO2. It is ruled a pollutant by the Supreme Court, and the Clean Air Act is invoked by the EPA, a pollutant. If there was no CO2 in the atmosphere, nothing would grow. But environmentalists went to court to require this designation. In any case, the law requires that the EPA needs to produce an endangerment finding confirming the need for control. Which, by the way, I prepared these remarks 2 days ago. They actually released something yesterday. I haven't had a chance to study. A long-term employee of the EPA, Dr. Alan Carlin, writes a 48-page report where he says, as of the best information I currently have, the greenhouse gas CO2 hypothesis as the cause of global warming, which this draft TSD, which is Treatment, Storage, and Disposal document in Washington, D.C., supports, is currently an invalid hypothesis from a scientific viewpoint because it fails a number of critical comparisons with available observable data. Any one of these findings should be enough to invalidate the hypothesis. The breadth of these findings leave no other possible conclusion based on current data. Bottom line, he differs with the views expressed by the administration and calls for a more careful analysis. What happens? He's summarily removed from involvement in the matter. If that had happened during the Bush administration, the media would still be buzzing. Not now. The science is supposed to be settled. But back to the handling of this new pollutant. Do we want to eliminate all carbon dioxide from the atmosphere like the pollutants mentioned earlier? Of course not. Yes, carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. But that's good. We need a greenhouse or we'd all freeze to death on this earth. Water vapor is the most prominent greenhouse gas, accounting for 95% of the greenhouse effect. Is the EPA going to rule that water vapor in the atmosphere is also to be regulated? Are they going to rule against clouds? Today, the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere in the Northern Hemisphere measures about 385 parts per million. I'm aware of studies that claim that if that level reached 450 parts per million or even up to 650 parts per million, the result, if there was adequate nitrogen